everyone. My name is Elizabeth Manns, and I'd like to welcome you to the April 4th Coalition Show. This is the May 29th, 2023 edition of the show, and it's been 455 shows since the closing of the North Adams Regional Hospital. The April 4th Coalition's mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights and are against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We support all the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as is the custom, we put the emphasis on Article 23 at the start of the show. Dick.
I'll do 1 and 3, okay?
Give me a break.
Article 23, everyone has the right to work, the free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work and protection against unemployment.
Number 2, everyone, without any discrimination, has the right to equal pay for equal work.
Number 3, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family and her family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection.
Number 4, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of her or his interests. And as is custom, we like to give a thank you to Michael Putnam, who is the program director for the community radio station, WMNB LP 107.1, for airing the audio portion of our show on Friday. And of course, to the staff at NBCTC TV and David Fabiano for helping us produce the show. And our show is on channel 1301 for public access, 1302 does educational access, and 1303 does the government access shows. And Dick, I know you wanted to start and put a stamp on the end of the housing issue at MCLA?
Yes, I had written a letter to the Berkshire Eagle, and I just, I'm thankful for having this show because it helps me educate myself on certain topics. And but after everything was said and done, and I heard President Burge's statements that were on WAMC, I felt obligated to write a letter and state my feelings, my personal feelings. Liz has not seen this letter, it's not representing her, but it's a letter to the editor of the Berkshire Eagle, and I also sent it to iBerkshire too. But MCLA's shelter spat underscores the inability to solve social problems. That was the title that the Berkshire Eagle put on it. This is a letter to the editor. I question Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts President James Burge's commitment to education into our North Berkshire community. Quote, the historic public purpose of American higher education is to respond to the needs and demands of society, President Burge said in an interview with WAMC published May 10th. The problem of the poor and unhoused is a symptom of a decline in democratic values and income inequality. A simple change in the earned income tax credit was able to cut child poverty by about 46% in just a few months. Massachusetts needs more than 200,000 new homes in order to start addressing the housing crisis. What is stopping Massachusetts from building these homes? Powerful interests who do not have a modicum of decency prevent democratic actions to address our problems. Democracy means participation and engagement. It requires leaders to inspire open and respectful dialogue to address the needs of the people. In 2014, the North Adams Regional Hospital was closed with 3 days' notice with no public hearing. Shortly after the hospital closing, the state closed our North Adams Welfare Office and our North Adams Employment Office with no public hearing. In order to respond to our community's needs and demands, President Burge should have held public meetings and panel discussions on the proposed emergency shelter and its effects on the future of the college and our community. The college could have educated the community about the crisis and provided a forum for an informed and respectful discussion. Instead, President Burge chose to keep his own counsel and avoid an encounter with the public. He acted as if it was his decision alone and failed to include the community input. Our society is suffering from people who act like autocrats and reject the democratic process of inclusion. There's still time for the college to provide the leadership in an open, inclusive educational forum that addresses the needs of the poor and the unsheltered.
Thank you, Dick.
Yeah.
So ultimately, this always brings me back to when President Mary Grant was doing the one about arming the public safety officers, because she knew it was going to be a divisive issue, not only on campus, but in the community, and wondering, there were going to be a ton of questions. So she held at least 3 forums on MCLA, 1 for each union, and then a public one. And then she allowed a period of discussion and input, and then she made the final decision. Now, my educated guess is they'd already pretty much made the final decision, but she went through it with the intent of easing people's minds and assuring them that this had been a well thought out decision. And my main critique, just as a personal person, and this is not a President Burge, came across as even though he now reports he'd been in discussion since November, it felt like a haphazard decision the way it came out, as if this was just, easy peasy, and we were just going to do this. And he didn't have the answers, and he didn't make the extra long effort to ease the concerns of not only the MCLA population, but the citizens of North Adams, which had he done, very possibly he might have gotten this through if he had shepherded it a little bit.
Not only that, though, the way he responded to questions from WAMC, he said he didn't feel like the community would welcome the homeless people into our community, and he felt that we would affect their safety. He felt that they wouldn't be safe. And these are all decisions he's making in a vacuum and throwing us under the bus, like not leading the community to have an educated discussion about homelessness. What are the things that are driving the issue? I mean, I just read in the Berkshire Eagle today, and I probably, I'll have to get it in front of me, but I can just remember one thing. They talked about affordable housing in South County.
Correct.
Talked about
the state was going to give them money.
The state was giving them money. And then they talked about how many millions of dollars were going to go to consultants on marketing. And then they talked about all this millions of dollars going here and there. But then when you got down to it, a one-bedroom apartment for subsidized housing would cost $800 a month. That's a lot of money for subsidized housing.
And where were they going to?
And then that was just a one-bedroom.
Right.
The others were over $2,000 for the larger ones, $2,100. And I don't see that as addressing the needs of the poor in the community.
It's barely addressing the needs of the middle class.
Right.
And also, in terms of the authoritarian actions, you wanted to discuss show a video with a press release from the Democratic Minority Leader in the House?
Oh, yes. We'll make a good segue. We're just shifting gears a little bit. We're talking about the chances of a default on the U.S. debt.
Which is being put on by the authoritarian
right. So
side of the Republican
Party. We
Party.
decided we're going to listen to Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House of Representatives, and 2 other members of the Democratic leadership. I think one is the minority whip. I can't remember her name, but I think she's from Massachusetts. And then there's also another gentleman. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but let's watch it, and we'll go from there.
I was trying to leave enough time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Sorry for the delay. America must always pay our bills. Period. Full stop. That has been done under Democratic presidents and Republican presidents, largely without gamesmanship, partisanship, or brinksmanship. Because the consequences of a dangerous default will be catastrophic for everyday Americans. No one should want that to happen. 3 times under the Trump administration, Democrats made sure that America would not default and that we paid our bills. Notwithstanding our strong public policy disagreements with the Trump presidency, including but not limited to the passage of the GOP tax scam, where 83% of the benefits went to the wealthiest 1% to subsidize the lifestyles of the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, and stick the American people with $2 trillion worth of debt. In fact, in our nation's 247-year history, 25% of the nation's debt was accumulated during the Trump presidency. That's fiscal responsibility. But yet 3 times, House Democrats worked with the Trump administration without gamesmanship, partisanship, brinksmanship, to make sure that America did not default and that we paid our bills. So why are things different right now? Why are House Republicans being so unreasonable and so extreme? Unfortunately, we can only really draw one conclusion as we are on the brink of default. House Republicans are determined to either extract deep, painful cuts that will hurt the health, the safety, or the well-being of everyday Americans, or crash the economy, default on our debt, and trigger a painful recession. Those are the 2 options that House Republicans see as the only viable paths forward. Not our words, Donald Trump's words. The extreme wing of the House Republican Conference's words. Matt Gaetz's words. The American people should understand that House Republicans are determined to accomplish one of 2 objectives: deep, extreme, painful cuts that will hurt the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people, hurt veterans, hurt disabled children, hurt teachers, hurt Social Security recipients, hurt people who desperately need nutrition assistance, or default on our debt. And many House Republicans have made their position clear. House Republicans are determined to crash the economy because they believe it will benefit them politically. That is the only explanation for their extreme and inherently unreasonable behavior. Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. So here we are, just days away from economic catastrophe, days away from higher mortgage payments, car loans, gutted retirement accounts, days away from losing 8 million jobs. Why? Because House Republicans have decided to default on America. So let's set the record straight. 1, this is a battle between extremism and common sense. From the beginning, the White House has put forward reasonable solutions. On March 9th, the president released a budget that invests in the success of families and businesses while cutting the deficit by $3 trillion. Republicans waited until April 25th to respond with their Default on America bill. Extreme cuts to veterans' health care, to child care, to first responders, to teachers, to the hungry people in this country, all to fund payouts for polluters and for those who want to cheat on their taxes. This is not normal. This is a hostage situation. Even Matt Gaetz recognized that today. He said Republicans don't feel like we should negotiate with our hostage. Speaker McCarthy and Patrick McHenry both admitted that avoiding default is the only concession they're willing to offer. And who has the GOP taken hostage? It's not the White House, it's not Congress, it's not Democrats, it's the American people. They want the American people to make an impossible choice. Devastating cuts or devastating default. Decimate food assistance or gut seniors' retirement savings. Pull kids out of childcare or destroy their parents' livelihoods. Cut $2 billion from veterans' health care or wipe out 8 million jobs. This is also not about debt, and it is not about spending. What's the evidence? As the leader just laid out, Republicans racked up $8 trillion in debt under Donald Trump, 1/4 of everything we owe in 4 short years. And at the same time, Republicans raised the debt ceiling 3 times, no strings attached. They don't care about spending. They care what ends up in the pockets of the wealthy and the well-connected. And when the president offered to freeze spending, they said no. Not unless you make it easier for the rich to dodge the IRS. When they had that chance this week to correct course and fund health care for our veterans, when they had a chance to help our heroes who were exposed to toxic chemicals like Agent Orange, to toxic burn pits, they canceled the vote. I do not know how they are going to go home and look at our veterans this Memorial Day. But I know this, the American people are watching, and they know House Republicans are responsible for this manufactured, very dangerous crisis. They are not going to forget. It takes a handful of members of the GOP to say enough. My message to them is this: be patriots. Put people over politics before it's too late. And with that, I yield to our chairman, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you, Whip Clark, for keeping our caucus united. House Democrats are proud to stand with Leader Jeffries and Whip Clark as they defend our values and our policy priorities. As Leader Jeffries has said time and time again, we cannot let the American economy be held hostage. Yesterday, the extreme Republican, whom Kevin McCarthy owns his speakership to, conceded what Democrats have been saying for weeks when Matt Gaetz said the quiet part out loud, that the limit, save, grow, that his colleagues support limit, save, grow, and they don't feel like they can negotiate with their hostage. That's how they feel. Negotiate with their hostage. Let's be clear, we're not the hostage here. As the whip said, the American public are the hostages here. School teachers, firefighters, our seniors, our veterans, working families across this country who could lose their jobs if we default. That's who Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy are holding hostage. And that's who House Democrats are holding the line for. Leader Jeffries.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Pete. Questions?
Yep. And I would actually go a little further. I don't even think they care about lining the pockets of the wealthy. I think they care about staying in power and doing anything that they think might enable them to win the 2024 elections and get another majority across the board.
Well, the only way they can do that, though, is lining the pockets of the wealthy, because they're the ones that fund their elections. Mm-hmm. So it's a horrible situation that it's.
And the American public should remember
they're playing
this.
politics with the economy, our economy, and the world economy.
They are. It's not just going to hurt here. It's going to hurt here the worst. But there will be a ripple effect across the whole entire world, because if the dollar is downgraded, it will no longer be the standard for the currency or anything else. Yeah. It'll move to China. You are swinging the economic power base over to China if you default. You know, And I honestly don't understand, the Republican position used to be, keeping America number one, being on the top, saying we're the greatest nation in the world. We won't be after we
But
default.
they just think the blame will be on the Democrats, so they see that as an advantage.
They're trying, that they're doing the standard playbook of saying it's all their fault, they won't meet us halfway, when reality is they shouldn't have to meet you at all. Because somewhere, not our founding fathers, but later in the history of the United States, somebody foresaw the possibility of this over another tragic issue. And you wanted to read Article 14
Yeah.
to explain that
the
part?
Amendment 14 of the United States Constitution, which was adopted in 1868, shortly after the Civil War. And the worry was that the Confederate States would get control of Congress and not pay the debt that was incurred in order to fight that war. So in Section 4 of Amendment 14, it states this: the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, should not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for loss of emancipation of any slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. So the validity of public debt of the United States, authorized by law, including the debts incurred by payments of the pension for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. It shall
Right,
not be questioned.
questioned.
And so
And-
what's going on here is the Congress voted certain laws and went through the appropriations process, and those laws were enacted.
Acted.
And now the time to pay those bills has come, and a bill that was passed in 1917 saying that Congress had to agree to raise the debt ceiling if the debt got over that amount, now is being used as a political tool to override an amendment to the Constitution. A bill passed
Right.
by Congress does not have supersede the Constitution of the United
It does
States.
not. It should not. And equally true, I think the intent was so that Congress could be a watchdog on debt, but not prevent debt. I mean, if that's the intent, the budget process is where you're
Right,
supposed
exactly.
to come together and figure out how to cut debt or raise revenue or whatever else is needed. And nowhere in this universe do you see the Republicans putting forth any plan to raise revenue to help us.
They don't want to tax the rich. They don't want the people to pay their fair share. They're afraid that the IRS is going to start doing audits of these richer people
And find out how many trillions they've banked away overseas.
The cuts they want to make in the proposed increases in the IRS budget will cost the American people millions and millions of
dollars.
I don't know the exact number, but they're going to make a dent
They are
just
indeed.
getting people to pay their fair share. But so all of this crisis, it reflects back to the Civil War. And we're here on, this show will be aired on Memorial Day.
It
or
will be.
Memorial Day weekend, and we've all, gone to the parades and heard the Gettysburg Address recited, and we talked about our fallen soldiers and how they died for us, the price that they paid.
So that we could be sitting here
Right.
having this show or
Right.
Enjoying a
And the
picnic.
veterans that didn't die but are still struggling, they need to have their bills paid.
paid, and they need this support.
Right, and they need the medical services from the VA. So
We actually promised them that.
yeah, so we have a promise that's a debt too that we owe. So, we try to recall our family members and loved ones that sacrificed. And now let's just listen to the
Gettysburg Address.
Gettysburg Address.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Wow. It's quite a speech.
It was indeed.
And it was a speech a battle that was fought for the freedom, free people from slavery.
Yep.
And that's what
That's what it's about.
workers' rights are all about. Yeah.
Slavery, freeing you from the slavery of.
Right. In order to get a contract and be able to work for yourself or start your own business, So, I hope you have a happy Memorial Day weekend. Hope you enjoy your friends and family. Hope you remember those that have gone before you and sacrificed. And let's have power to the people.
And we will see you next week.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons are